Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's fireside chat on leadership in times of chaos. The energy industry is navigating a perfect storm: volatile markets, shifting regulations, and a rapid push towards decarbonization. Whether you're leading a legacy business or scaling a renewable startup, the pressure to adapt and lead effectively has never been greater. Today's conversation goes beyond theory. We're joined by leaders who've faced real challenges, guiding their teams through uncertainty, driving innovation, and making tough calls when the future is unclear. Each brings a distinct lens on what it means to lead through disruption. Let me briefly introduce our speakers. First, we have Rollin Weatherall. Rollin brings decades of leadership in project execution, from the U.S. Navy Civil Engineering Corps to global roles at Technip and TESS-H2. Now, at TESS-H2, he's helping lead e-natural gas developments worldwide. His leadership is shaped by military service, entrepreneurial grit, and a belief that good leaders don't make excuses. They find a way to get things done. Next, Justin Freeman. Justin leads CCUS and hydrogen strategy at Kaufman Engineers, bringing experience from international gigaprojects and low-carbon energy transitions. In times of disruption, he focuses on purpose, empathy, and long-term thinking, guided by the principle that purpose affirms trust and trust affirms purpose. Next, Brian Taylor. Brian helps drive cultural clarity and organizational momentum at Chevron. His leadership is rooted in curiosity, humility, and sharp observation, fueled by the motto, "Take your job seriously, but not yourself." He's a lifelong learner committed to creating alignment where others see chaos. Finally, Anthony Borski. Anthony oversees multi-megawatt hydrogen projects at Nel, leading everything from product development to delivery. With experience across oil and gas, EPC, and innovation, he believes that understanding people and culture is key to business success. He's inspired by the idea that if you can't do the little things right, you'll never get the big things right. So let's dive right into our conversation here. So my first question to the panel: we're seeing so many changes impact the industry, affecting what you're already doing today and the work that needs to get done in the future. How are executives and leaders in your organizations prioritizing what's important? We'll start with Rollin.
Yeah, in this day and time with the uncertainty in our market, we're really focused on staying on mission and motivating our team to focus on the core part of what we're doing, and don't get distracted with all the changes that are going on in that uncertainty. And even though it's an exciting time in our market, there are still a lot of changes and challenges and new incentives and that are driving our innovation and the employees and the motivation that they have. And so it's important for us to just stick to that mission and focus on that.
That's interesting, focusing on the mission. So Rollin, how do you, as you're thinking about bringing the mission forward and you're aligning with your leaders and your peers, so what are some ways that you guys bring that mission together? How do you get grounded on that? What does that conversation look like?
Yeah, for us, we've got a core model of what we try to build in a development project. And so we chase after some key items that we use to really focus in on development. So the feedstocks that are coming in there and the design around our plant. And that's really, as long as we focus on that and chase opportunities that really are aligned to what we're going after, that really keeps the team focused. Don't get distracted on if this incentive is going to be in place or not. That's not really what we're focused on. We're really focusing on those key things that make our project successful, our development successful, and those will drive the economics of our opportunity. And if the team can just think about that, not get distracted, that's really keeping focused on our core mission.
That's excellent. So it sounds like it's a little bit of reiterating and always showing up and having those fixed priorities, but doing that across your peer groups, right? Because oftentimes, if others are saying there's different priorities and you're all working on the same stuff, then teams are starting to hear different things, right?
Yeah, and it's important not to stay siloed, keep crosstalk amongst the developments and ensure we're passing on lessons learned and really working together as a team to help, progress each one, because we're a global opportunity here. And so we've got team members that are stretched across the globe that are looking at developments and meeting with different counterparties. And so we've got to do a good job of, cross-pollinating the information that we've got, and ensuring that, we really learn from what other team members are doing, the initiatives that they're doing, because the problems are common across all developments.
Yeah, I love that. That's so fantastic. Working cross-functionally, and especially in a global setting, I think that can be very challenging. And so is there like if you had a bit of maybe one pro tip for folks out there that do work in very large organizations, they're working globally. Obviously, cultures are different in different countries. And so, you think about collaborative environments versus, say, hierarchical environments. And so it's so different, right? So as you kind of work with people that work in different cultures and groups, what's something that you found to be helpful to bring others along that are working in different cultures?
Yeah, I think it's important. We get together and we have, it's almost like networking when you're trying to find a job and your opportunity, right? You have to do the same in the company as well. And getting to know other individuals and peers in your group that are going through that, and not just at the surface level, getting to know them personally too, and making a connection is very important. For us as a small business, in fact, we still face similar challenges that a large company does. We think we are supposed to integrate well, but at times it's very hard. And so getting together, networking together, and ensuring we get to know each other and understand how each other works is extremely important. And we have to respect that. And they may do things a little bit differently than we do them here, but it's important for us to understand that's how we help each other.
I love it. I love that, Rollin. Thank you for that bit of speed dating in the business world.
It is, yes.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna move on to Brian.
All right. So thinking about how leaders prioritize things in the business, that's kind of a loaded question. We're doing a lot of work right now at Chevron on that. We've been doing a lot of work on that, and we'll continue to have to do a lot of work on that. One of the things that sticks out to me is sort of the parallel to personal life that you see with decision making and prioritization. So early in my career, I remember being plagued by project managers or vice presidents who would always drop the line, "I'll know it when I see it." And if you've ever been in a car with a group of people who are hungry and they just say, "I don't know, you pick." What that ends up being is you throwing out ideas and then them voting them down repeatedly, and that's how everyone ends up at Chili's. So you're really struggling to when it comes to a leadership standpoint,
Sure.
this is where leaders earn their keep, is ensuring that individual performance and compensation is aligned with those critical enterprise objectives. But that means that they have to pay attention to the systems, not just the PowerPoint slides. Systems drive behaviors, not slides. And so being very clear on decision rights, being very clear on what those critical metrics are, Rollin mentioned it a minute ago, those can't be little outputs. They have to be what's going to really move the needle. And if everyone is aligned on what value is being realized and where it takes place, your work when it comes to prioritization won't be fraught with so much anxiety.
That sounds interesting. I like that. If I'm hearing correctly, it's a focus on kind of tying, well, thinking about what the most important things are, but making sure it's tied to metrics or to measures of success. That also makes me think, just in some of the other folks that I've talked to in the past, motivation plays a big role in that too, I imagine, right? As if you're showing up to work every day and you need to get everybody on the same page and feel motivated, they've got to kind of know, how is what I'm doing tying back to what's really going to make a difference, right? So I'd be curious to kind of maybe similar question, like pro tip or pro tips
Mm.
on alignment, right? Like, what are some things you've seen, maybe yourself, leaders, others, that do a really good job of that alignment, and like, what are the things that they're doing? What's making a difference?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that immediately come to mind. One is there's an old Japanese proverb that mentions that your garden isn't finished until you've taken everything out of it that you can, and it still be a garden. So thinking about why prioritization and resource allocation fails so often within projects, it's typically because there's just too much. There's too many factors, too many variables. Your focus is spread too thin, and that's our job as a leader to clarify what we're trying to do. I think the other piece is, and this seems almost elementary, but really sit back and look at your performance agreements that you've set with your people at the beginning of the year. I know early career I was working in the sort of the green space within Chevron, and we were struggling. We kept having the same projects cycled through our hopper, and
Mm.
we kept finding ourselves tripping over our shoes every time in the same way. It's almost like we weren't learning from ourselves. And so we sat down and we looked at all of our project managers' performance agreements. And we used a very waterfall, still use a very waterfall type approach to project development. And what we had measured people's performance on was them getting all of their projects, at least 2 projects per year, progressed past phase 2.
Mm.
Well, that doesn't mean it's a good project. That just means they get a great job this year and an extra big bonus if they got it greenlit for construction. Not any enterprise business value, no real learnings. That's how we set their individual performance. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that when I say that I want enterprise value, I say it not just with my slides, my speeches, my PowerPoints, my conversations in the hallway, but with where we put our compensation and our rewards. So don't send mixed signals to your people by compensating one thing but telling people another.
I love it. Thank you. Thanks so much, Brian. All right, Anthony, you're up next. Same question for you.
All right, thanks, Alan.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that the most important thing is to focus on your long-term vision and understand where your company wants to be in 5 and 10 years, and then work your way back from there. And
Mm.
as you'd mentioned, there's a lot of volatility in the market. Um, it's very important that you maintain that long-term outlook without necessarily neglecting your short-term needs. But for example, we're seeing a lot of 2 gigawatt projects that have suddenly become 2 megawatt projects. And as we're developing products for a long-term viewpoint, it'd be very easy to shift, your product development to meet current market needs. And a lot of companies are doing that, but it's also important to maintain that long-term focus and build the products that the industry will need in 5 and 10 years. We're seeing that the product development cycle in renewable energy is a lot faster than it had been in where a lot of us had worked in oil and gas, and a lot of that is due to an acceleration of funding by the Department of Energy and a willingness by investors to speed up the development process. So the market is telling us to fail fast, which is fantastic if you're an engineer, and it's really dangerous if you're a businessman. But part of that is just with that known, just maintaining that leadership style where you're very transparent to the market and you're very transparent internally, so that you're acknowledging the things that are going well and you're also acknowledging the things that are not going well. And through that, I think that's what's really motivating people is to stay in the industries, to see the speed at which this industry is progressing.
I love that. And as I was kind of reflecting on the last bit of what you were saying, it seems like it's a bit of a two-way street. You've got to have the long-term vision, but you've got to keep your eyes and ears to the ground with your teams, to understand, what are we doing today? Is that still the right thing to do? And then how does that kind of tie not just the goals as we talked about earlier, but also in terms of the strategy, in terms of where you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think that's really fascinating. Looking at long-term strategy and short-term goals. And so what would be your pro tip? And I'm thinking about that one in particular, and based on what you said, pro tip on how do you balance long-term goals and then aligning that with the short term, like we got to do this right now.
You know, a lot of it is you have to be cognizant of what the market's saying. You can't just put blinders on and expect to get to the finish line. But at the same time, you have to surround yourself with people that understand what's going on and listen a lot more than we talk. And you know, understand where your business partners, where your clients, and ultimately where the industry wants to go, and then try to develop products to meet them at those long-term intersections.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate it. All right, Justin, same question.
Yeah, well, I think that in times of chaos or crisis, it really sort of tests, do you live your mission statement? Do you live kind of the words that are easy to live when times are good? And Kaufman, we really prioritize our people. We are a people company, right? We don't have assets, so our business is our people. And that empowerment, that's sort of that lowest level, because they're at the tool face, they know what's going on, right? But they have to have that clarity as to like what we're trying to do. And when your mission statement talks about your client success, well, like we're trying to help our clients navigate this turbulent time, right? Like there's a lot of change going on, and so building those relationships, and some of those relationships are the folks that are on this call with me today, right? And how do we collaborate? How do we figure out ways forward? As Anthony was talking about, that shift from 2 gigawatts to 2 megawatts, right? That's a tidal change in terms of like the growth of the electrolyzer industry. And I find myself listening to public broadcasting on the Senate floor and amendments that are being put forward yesterday. Like we're dealing with this legislative driven uncertainty in the United States right now. But ultimately, it's an opportunity to tune your business up as well. The crisis is an opportunity to look at the things that are working, having honest conversations with your employees about what's the priorities, and then making those difficult decisions that finding the opportunities where things are not working, fine tune that business model. That might be letting people go in hard times, right? But you're focused on profitability, the revenue, but ultimately your people as well. And it's really a shift in priorities and being dynamic and understanding where is the opportunities today. And that might mean that you have to shift resources from one industry to another or new business lines, and just being very flexible and agile in how you approach a business.
I love it. I love it. I like what you said, and what I know of Kaufman, you guys have a similar model. You've got multiple offices across the United States, and there's the legislative, the broader policies and things that are impacting the industry, and then I imagine there's probably some local cultures, as we kind of talk about, right, where local offices have their own markets, and there's different demands, right, across different markets. And so if you're aligned, I'm curious, if you're trying to, organizations are trying to align their enterprise goals, while at the same time there's local markets and local market shifts in the country. And so how do you guys balance, here's where we want to go, and then I'm sure, there's probably different degrees of alignment or acceptance on whether that's the right direction or not from local offices. How do you guys balance that?
Yeah, you hit on it. Like we have 23 local offices, right? 23 offices that have their own profit and loss. And then we have folks like myself that are sitting at a corporate level that are looking at market segments, that are looking at industry segments, industry policy drivers, where the market's developing. And so we try to find that healthy tension in the center, right? Where you have that local office, you have that local expertise of our clients and those relationships at a local, office level. And then we also have, kind of the corporate perspective and, where we see markets trending. So, we can do things within sort of that corporate market segment of fine tuning our own business to, try to kind of drive that excellence. But again, it's that relationship with that local office. And, you might have the perfect strategy, but if you don't have that relationship with that person that's driving that local office, you're not going to be able to implement it. So many times it kind of comes back to that people business. Like you have to have those good relationships, whether it's with your clients or whether it's with your own employees or your own managers, your own leaders. So
Love it. Thank you so much. All right, excellent. So just kind of wrapping up this question, how do we get everybody aligned? So some things I heard is tying your goals to your business metrics. So making sure your business metrics and your goals align. Thinking about strategy, long-term strategy, and the short-term strategy, and making sure there's a fine balance between both. The other one, building a network. Making sure that you're building the right relationships across your organizations because relationships really move the needle. It's the people. And then the last we heard was tuning your business both at a broader enterprise perspective and the local perspective, but bringing people along and being honest with them about where the market is and where it's going. Awesome. I think our listeners are really going to appreciate some of those points, and it's going to really resonate. All right, next question. So we talk about prioritization with leaders. Awesome, great. Well, what happens with prioritization, and you guys touched on this a little bit, but I do want to double click on this a little bit more. So as soon as you prioritize as a leader, all of a sudden, all the things you just prioritize now trickle down to the people. So and they weren't really waiting, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for you to tell them what to do. So you guys all have very smart people in your organizations that are doing some really amazing, great work. But these things are changing. We live in an uncertain world and things keep coming down the pipeline all the time. So the question is, you already talked about how we drive alignment. How do you help them stay focused so they're not demotivated, they're not burnt out, or they're not distracted? And this time we'll start with Anthony.
Okay. I think the first thing is that you have to align your team member goals with the company's goals. And that, in order for, your team members have to win if you're going to win, which means, you need to be able to establish a growth plan for them, allow them to, in a smaller business, such as now, branch out, learn, different, learn different, different roles, get more tools, kind of grow themselves within the business and allow them to kind of venture out and see new opportunities even within the company, kind of aligning with the network inside of your own company. We hire people that are not we do tend to hire people that are kind of jack of all trades that have interests beyond just one specific role, and that's fantastic when you're looking at building a company that may dynamically change products, goals, and opportunities. So it's very important that they have the opportunity to forge their own path, to find things that they're interested in, be a part of their own growth plans, and establish, a learning ladder for each one of them. And then finally, I think it's just, building skill sets beyond the ones that we hired you for, and where you find opportunities or you find things that you're interested in as a manager, making sure that you're helping them, realize those opportunities and giving them, whether it's financial incentives or even, just giving them time in their day to try to establish their own, career paths.
I love that, Anthony. It's kind of making me think about the old ways of working and the new ways of working, right? The old ways, here's your job responsibilities, here's how things work around here, and let's provide you a bunch of training on how to adapt very quickly and do what we need you to do. With uncertainty and things changing, that seems very counterintuitive nowadays. It sounds like people know what's going on, people see what's happening in the market. There's a lot more visibility around where the opportunities are. And if you want to keep your people, they've got to find those opportunities in the organization. They've got to be able to get the freedom to do it. And I love your point around it sometimes might feel a little fearful to give people a little bit of time and space because you constantly want them on something. But if everything's changing, sometimes it takes a little time to learn something. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to understand or come up with a plan on, okay, something changed. What do I need to do? But I really that's such an important point, Anthony, you make about
You know, in
giving that.
volatile times, it's less important to follow the guidebook as much as it is to reevaluate it. Does it need to be rewritten and give people, you know, an opportunity to, you know, actually change the way that they're working and create new templates and new rules.
Love it. Awesome. Justin.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, to me, a lot of times in these environments, it really kind of comes to be very important to really start with why. Like, you know, why are you doing certain things as a business, right? Providing that organizational strategic clarity or that tactical clarity of why you're doing something, but then really sort of empowering the teams. And I kind of like to use a sort of the guardrail terminology, right? Like, here's your guardrails in which you're empowered to go do things and why we're trying to do these things. Because if everybody's looking to me in times of crisis for the answer, I can't field all those, you know, moments of crisis or contract issues or opportunities that we're seeking. Like, we need the whole organization to be focused on our business winning. And if everybody's looking to me for answers, I'm going to be a bottleneck in that, right? And so just making sure there's that clarity around the why. And then as Anthony was talking about, the opportunities to, you know, build your skills, like, you know, what are things that you're passionate around? Like, where are there new opportunities? Where are there things that we're not looking for? You know, I think that is crisis, you know, is an opportunity for the business to fine tune the business model, but also for individuals to really sort of find new opportunities that they can grow into. And, you know, I think in a previous chapter of my career, you know, I had to deal with employee sets that, you know, were going through a major reorganization and not really sure if they were going to have a job, right? And part of that conversation, to me, it kind of came down to people. We're like really getting to know those people in your organization, what drives them, what makes them happy, right? Like, why do you come to work? Like, you know, is this the right sort of profession that you're in today? Like, are you passionate around this? Like, sort of really look, you know, inward and also make sure your employees really are on a track of fulfillment. You know, I always tell people, you know, kind of through my mentorship and things that I've learned from people that have mentored me that I try to pass down to them is, you know, you come to work and it's a huge part of your life. And if you spend 30 to 40 years like not enjoying work, like you're wasting a huge part of your life. And if you do the things that you're passionate around, you will be successful. So, you know, that self-reflection and crisis too is like, is this what's driving you that you're going to be happy in 30 years time, that this is where you want to be?
Awesome. I love it, Justin. Maybe this is, I feel like I know the answer to this, and it might be just a bit of a, as I call it, a Captain Obvious question. But what do you, and I'm just thinking about some examples, or if you can double click on this. What happens if somebody's not the right fit? Whether it's from your organization perspective, or something going on with them, whatever it might be, but there just doesn't seem to be a long-term fit, right? And in times of certainty, we're all going through a lot. Like, it's already hard enough, right, with everything that's going
Yeah.
on in the world, and then this doesn't make it easier. So how do you, you know, how do you handle that conversation?
So I think you have to lead with honesty, you know, and just talk to the person, you know, if there is a doubt as to whether they're a right fit in the organization or a right fit in the job that they're in, you know, have that frank, difficult conversation. But if you're coming from a place of, you know, kind of leading with empathy and like, I want you as a person to be happy. Like, we have a business as well, right? But, you know, let's find, you know, that sort of roadmap or steps that we can take to, you know, see if we can move this in a different direction than where it's headed. but ultimately be very clear with, kind of what the criteria is that's going to result in, having to have a more difficult conversation, maybe letting that person go. But also, if the folks that I've really sort of mentored in my career, if you spend the time to get to know them as people, you kind of know what's going on with their family. You understand kind of what's going on in their life. Like, they have a sick mom or dad. Maybe that's been dragging down their performance. Maybe they need to move to a different part of the country, like, and just help them make that life decision. But ultimately, you also have to make a business decision. And sometimes those two things, don't meet where people want them to.
Thanks, Justin. All right. Brian. Or yeah, Brian. Let's do Brian.
Okay, so just sort of, you mentioned earlier burnout and distraction, and that's one of the things that I really try to step back when I think about those two things is how I felt in that space too. Feeling a bit of it right now, actually. So when you think about how we help our teams face burnout, demotivation, distraction, all of those things, it's helpful to just kind of take a step back and as mentioned by a few people already, think like a human. We're facing borderline irresponsible amounts of stimuli. Nothing seems certain. I had coffee with someone recently who works very close to the market and said that she's had multiple lunches ruined by when a certain head of state gets on Twitter. So there's things that just seemingly evolve second to second. So when I think about the languishing, the burnout, and the distraction that causes our teams, I want to make sure that my mental model, how I make decisions and how I'm performing, doesn't become another one of those things in a laundry list of things that is causing them to feel that burnout, that stress, that distraction. So being clear is kind, and being consistent is even kinder. So I have to make sure that I'm not one of those things that's constantly whipsawing people around their focus from one space to the next. And then, we talked about prioritization earlier, and sometimes in our effort to have a laser focus on what our priorities are, we fail to realize that being laser focused on everything is everything all the time. That's just not sustainable. So Anthony mentioned it, I think, at the outset of this question, giving people a chance to develop, giving people a chance to explore something that's not necessarily on the scorecard as we would write it down, but making sure that you build that into as part of their job. That'll help them when we really need them to buckle down and be focused on something. That'll help them to have that energy to be able to do so, because they'll have the space to do some of that more creative exploration type work. And the other piece is, I can't lie to myself as a leader. I can't say, well, we'll just do something more efficiently. I'm not one for dropping a ton of Drucker quotes, but his comment about there's nothing so useless as doing something that shouldn't be done at all, doing it more efficiently, that doesn't help anybody. So when I see a team that's languishing or that's burnt out, platitudes like, well, we're going to work smarter, not harder, or we're going to be more efficient, or work-life balance, that's not help to them. At that point, they're already burnt out. So really have to think about how I reduce friction, not just add force. And a lot of that has to do with taking things off of the plate that doesn't belong there in the first place. One of the things that I notice, at least in my organization, that we're extremely good at, we are very good at making lists. But lists and prioritization is not the same thing. A plan means you've married your priorities with your resources. Just telling people to spread thinner and thinner, that's neither humane nor responsible from a capital stewardship standpoint. So, there's the super corporate answer, I'm sure, to this, but really think like a person. Think about the last time you were in that spot, what you wish the leader had done when you went to the bar after work, what you were talking about with your colleagues, what you wish had happened. Be that kind of a leader.
I love that. See things from their perspective as well, right? Kind of maybe a little bit of meet them where they are. Everybody's in a different spot, and you've got to kind of be able to meet people where they are. It's not a cookie cutter approach. So, all right, fantastic. And then Rollin,
Yeah.
same
I
question to
mean, for
you.
me, I think just to repeat what a lot of us have said, I think it's super important to get to know your people personally, and through that, empower them in the things that they want to do and where they want to go. And, aligning that to the company mission and what you're focused on is your job as a leader, and figure out the best fit for them, where they need to be, what they need to be doing. And, I think also encouraging them during meetings too, and opportunities to speak up, right? And you do that through empowerment. And that's always a big focus I have with the team, is constantly encouraging. If everybody's quiet in the room in the meeting and you're the only one talking, there's a problem, right? So, that's a big reason for a lot of people that get burned out. You can notice it, you can see it. They are just all of a sudden showing up to meetings and they're quiet. They have nothing to say, no input to give, and you're losing that valuable resource, right? We hired you for a reason, and you bring expertise to the table, and we want you to participate. And so you as a leader, you need to sit down with that individual, get to know what's going on, and encourage them to really be empowered to stand up and say something, when the times are right, when they feel like that's an area of their expertise.
Yeah, I love that, right? And part of me also thinks about um it's a tough job, which will kind of lead us into our next question here shortly, but it's a tough job we've signed up as leaders, because we also go through our own cycles, right? And we go through our own ups and downs, let alone people having theirs, right? And so maybe sometimes the ones when we worked with some of these people and gave them the attention, gave them the time, we can also lose sight of that, the same thing, right? Where we lose sight of that person because of our own kind of what we're going through. So it just makes me think it's a tough job. It's a tough job that we've kind of signed up for.
And Justin kind of mentioned it earlier too, about mentorship, and I think we encouraging individuals to seek mentorship, right? And looking for other leaders within the organization that are willing to be a mentor. Doesn't that, if it's somebody in your business line, encourage them to have a mentor outside of the business line, right? And it's always good. And that's how you're going to build those tools in your toolbox that Anthony was mentioning.
I love it. It's very sage advice. Awesome. So for helping teams focus, just recapping a little bit, how like give opportunity and space to people so that they can change what needs to change. As Jesse kind of talked about, you can't, as a leader, you can't solve everything. And so you've got to kind of help people feel empowered to do that. Get clear on the why, so people take ownership of the problem. Get to know your people personally. And then this last bit, Roland, I love it. Seek out mentorship, right? And maybe just one last thing, as I was thinking about that a little bit too, is oftentimes, this is my manager, and then you kind of work everything around the one person. Not to say it's bad, but like there are other people. So if you're facing problems, there could be other people in the organization that have gone through something similar, or somebody who can guide you to help you navigate, and you don't want to be quiet quitting, right? You don't want people to quietly quit. So uh, fantastic. Love it. Now we're going to get to the last question. It's a hard-hitting question. Um, uh, I think we've all come to realize that you guys are also, I believe, human beings that have feelings and emotions, and you're not exempt from what everybody's going through with uncertainty. So I want to turn the question. I think it's a good way for us to kind of end and turn the question inward, and not looking outward. I'd love to kind of hear about how are you keeping yourself grounded, and doing your best to be a leader. What are some things that you're doing that helps you get through some of these challenges that we've talked about today? And so I'd like to start with Brian.
Yeah, it's definitely a meaty one. So thanks for that.
And we expect
Uh,
meaty answers. We want you to get real.
So I'll try to go with two semi-professional and one more personal one sort of idea around this. First, you can't simplify complexity. So if you have an adversarial relationship with the environment around you, that's like being angry at the weather. That's not going to change anything. So really thinking about, okay, this is an environment through which I need to navigate. That kind of takes some of the emotional churn out of it. That's more of an environmental space. Sort of a behavioral piece or an approach piece, I guess, a mantra. I got a quote from my grandfather. He may have stolen it from somewhere else. I don't know, but it stuck with me. Take your job seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. So whatever job I've had, I've tried to take that on. And to me, what the quality that really reminds me is to remove my ego out of things, really try to approach things with humility. And that sometimes is easier than others when we have a preferred option, when we really want to steer the company or a team in a certain direction, but it's not going the way we want. Sometimes we can get a little ahead of ourselves and really start to think about what we need to do. But that's when you also lose your own grounding, is when you start to let your ego take control. Leading to me is more about seeing around corners and enabling those awesome people around us than having answers all the time. So I have to make sure that as seriously as I take my job, I don't take myself so seriously that I can't utter those ever rarer words, I don't know. The other way to keep grounded for me is to check relentlessly in on my people. We're human, we're going through it, we're struggling. So check in on each other. But check in on your people. You never want to have a situation where you're looking back at someone you've lost, not just from the company, but someone we've actually lost, and wondered, I wonder if I had made that call, or, what could I have said that might have changed things? These are serious times that we're living in, and they have a compounding effect. Now, someone made the comment earlier, we don't know what necessarily people have going on at home, whether they have a sick parent or stuff. So stay grounded by staying human, care about people. And I guess for me, this is the energy industry, but I can very confidently say that no barrel of oil or megawatt of power is more important than the people around me.
I love it. Thanks, Brian. Rollin?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's, I think ensuring that I, take that statement personally, where I recharge myself and ensure that I'm still growing personally. I think, family is very important to me, and it's very important to the people that work for me. And so as I get to know them and we build a family together at work, we, using each other to help each other, right? If you've got a lot going on, hey, I can take something on my plate. We spread the wealth a little bit just to make sure we can be successful as a team, I think is incredibly important. And, that's, to me, it ties back to an entrepreneurial, way of doing business is, even though you've got a small organization, everybody does everything sometimes, right? You do what you need to do to get the job done. And I think also it is good to look at ways that you have failed previously, reflect on those and how you would do them different. And that kind of, you open it up in a kind of discussion that is not really about pointing fingers, right? It's about, hey, we as a team, we will all have a failure at some point, and we need to learn as a team together. We'll get through this together, and we'll develop new ways of working that will help us be successful the next time this opportunity comes up. And so I think that's incredibly important. And then, I grew up with a father who ran a business and had ups and downs in his business, and the resiliency that he had faced with that and driving through those. I think that's another thing I reflect on a regular basis. I mean, we have ups and downs going on in this business, the construction business and the oil and gas business. And, we get through it, and the industry will continue to move forward. And that's what we've got to encourage the employees and empower them, with that kind of attitude.
Thanks, Rollin. Anthony.
Yes, kind of just echoing what everybody else said. It's really important to kind of embrace your own humanity. For many of us, I think everyone on this call actually practices, servant leadership, and you can give and give and give until there's nothing left. And it's very important that you find a way to recharge. I like to go to lunch with the team, and you're not allowed to talk about work. Or I will go to our office and go find someone to go play golf with. So it's very important that you find a way to turn it off and find a way to recharge your battery. And when you're on an airplane and the bags come down in an emergency, they always tell you to put yours on before you put your child's on. And it's very important, because if you're not good and if you're not ready, you're not going to help anyone else. And you can't lead if you're not yourself. So self-care is very important, mentally and physically. I take early morning calls on walks. Sometimes you just do what you have to do to make sure that you're maintaining your own physical and mental integrity. But outside of that, it's very important to have friends in the industry. Go to industry events, practice beer diplomacy, and try not to talk about work, and actually understand kind of what's going on with other people that you surround yourself with.
Thanks, Anthony. Very, very wise words there. Justin, take us home.
Yeah, well, I think some of these chaotic times, they can be pretty humbling, right? I'm a pretty ambitious, aggressive person most of the time, and when you see your business plan completely collapse when it was on a trajectory to totally, crush it, like, man, that's not fun, right? Like, so just kind of having that humility, and as Brian was talking about, like those complex environments, like certain things that are just outside of your control, and you have to just realize that, accept that, and then focus on the things that you can control, and kind of leading with that truth as well. Like, bad news doesn't get better with age, right? And so, just being really clear. I like Brian's statement again. It was like, being clear is kind, being consistent is kinder. You're just consistent about, what your priorities are, what your message is. I sent a message about the green hydrogen industry to our general managers. It wasn't a rosy picture, right? I painted out why it was not, on the growth trajectory of 2 gigawatt scale plants. And this is the reasons why. Here's some of the market trends. Here's the data centers, all the stuff that's going on in our world. And I got one of our GMs that, just came back and sent me a short email and just said, hey, thanks for the, clear message, that was bad news, right? About our growth of our hydrogen segment of our business. They appreciated that, and they appreciated getting that bad news, but early, often, and then they can better plan their business. And I think that, tying back to, focusing on yourself in the sense of, your whether you have your family or what are the things that fill up your bucket as an individual. Just came back from a family reunion. We were celebrating my mom's 80th birthday. So we have massive chaos going on in my business. I spent 40 hours making my mom's photo book for celebrating her birthday and chasing my brothers down, trying to get pictures from all their kids and stories and write-ups. That was far more important to my mom than anything I could have ever done in my business environment, right? Doesn't matter how successful I am or anything like that. That book is going to be more meaningful to her. And us coming together to celebrate her life is going to be a memory I have for the rest of my life. And I prioritize taking that time off, unplugging, being truly present with my brothers and my wife and my kids and us all celebrating. And I think those are the things that really pay dividends, because if you're happy with yourself, if your relationships are in a good spot, that's when you bring your best self to your business, right? If the things that are falling apart in your personal life, like that's going to translate into your business life as well. And some of the things that I rely on are some of the folks that are on this call. Some of the calls that I have on a Friday, we might talk about work for 5 minutes, and then we're talking about, baseball games, or we're talking about the next time we're going to get together, or going fishing, or I'm telling stories about my ice hockey rink. And it's like you're building those relationships, because ultimately a lot of the people that I work with become my really good friends as well. And I think that's kind of a testament to the people that you seek out in your business life. I want to work with people that I enjoy. And that is just something that is true in good times and is even more true in tough times.
Thank you, Justin. So powerful, everybody's message. I really, really value and appreciate you guys sharing that. So to kind of take us home here, I do want to thank each one of you for opening up today, sharing with honesty and depth. I really appreciate you sharing your experiences, your career, your family. I think there's a lot of powerful messages to take away today. And I also want to thank everybody who's joined us today and been part of this amazing experience with our leaders here. We've heard some really, really powerful stories of leading through tough and predictable moments, whether it's with your people, your peers, your family, your friends. It's an amazing reminder that chaos doesn't mean you freeze up. It means you adapt, you get clear on what matters, and you keep moving with purpose. So with that being said, I hope everybody who joined this session, you're leaving with something. It might be an idea, a mindset shift, or maybe a little bit more confidence to get through whatever's coming next in your world. So take care and keep leading forward.